Hi there, and welcome to the Watson Weekend. We're your hosts. I am Rick Watson.
Hey, it's Jessica Lisetsky. We're back in the studio
Boom.
versus being live.
Let's see if we remember how to do this.
I don't
The
know. I
Watson
think I'm gonna have
Weekend
to
is
dust it
your
off.
exactly. This is your weekly dose of medicine with just enough sugar to make it go down that little bit easier. We're your place to go in retail tech, e-commerce,
Add
and
supply chain,
yeah,
add Gen
all the things.
AI, a Gen Tech.
NRF recap,
Yeah,
all
all
the
the things.
things.
We're here for you. Don't go anywhere. We know you plan your whole week around it. So here we go. And we are fortunate enough to be brought in partnership with Miracle. It's an amazing team, and we enjoyed spending time with them at NRF. They are powering many of the world's marketplaces as you know it. And Rick, I think we just have to talk about the live event for just a second. It was an amazing time, right?
Yeah, we had such a great time. Over 100 of our closest friends. I think that we tried to do a count. Obviously, for events, it's very hard. I think we were up to 120 at one point, but the room was jamming. We got to meet a lot of our sponsors, which was super great. Christine and Sabrina from Miracle were there, as you mentioned. A couple of the things that we did. First of all, we had the best drinks and food out there. How about
True.
those sliders and the
Ye
chicken satay? It seemed to be like a race between those two.
Yeah, it was a tough call between those 2. Those went pretty fast. I didn't even get one, but they're legendary now. Like,
Right.
the stories have gone time and time again of how good they were.
Yeah, everyone's talking about that. So I did a keynote for 20 minutes or so on the 5 forces in e-commerce, talking about what's coming up in 2025. We then moved to a live panel discussion with Alara Verrett, the Chief Digital and Customer Officer at Reitman's, as well as the VP of e-commerce at Rainbow Shops, our friend and yours, David Cost. And then that was wrapped up by a live taping of our show, The Watson Weekend, with both of our good friends, Michael Jones. That was super excited too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Michael Jones is now at Candle Science as the CEO. He's been at eBay, CEO of Spoonflower. We had a opportunity to work with him at Channel Advisor, so we're bringing some flashbacks back there. And then Travis Hess did a little roasting of Rick.
Yeah, he kind of crashed the event. I was not expecting it. This was definitely not planned, at least from my point of view. I
It
think
was
this
not.
was Vinny going a little bit rogue from this. There was a little too much discussion of my hair for my comfort.
Yeah. Well, I think that Travis took a little page out of the Scott Wingo playbook and really just went hard after it. But no, it was not planned for you. A couple of us were on the inside, and this was some puppeteering from our producer Vinny. So it was fun. If you did not have a chance to make it, I know that the RMW Commerce team has a lot of exciting plans for hopefully more live events in the future. But you can always catch us here on the ready every Friday.
Exactly. And if you are listening live right now, we'd love for you to throw in the comments where you're listening from. Did you attend the event? Did you wish you attended the event? We'd love to hear some. Edward also already has a question. Is that going to be on YouTube? For sure. We're going to put up so much of the content up on YouTube. TikTok is long, at least for the next 5 minutes until they take
Yeah.
it down. We'll back it up if we move it to TikTok, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess we'll get started with the headline hangover, and then we're going to dive right into the show. So you mentioned this, Rick. TikTok, no more. I mean, the clock is counting, and is it going to go TikTok boom or TikTok zoom? And I think we're just kind of all waiting to see what things transpire. But it doesn't feel like this is the end for one of the largest, most prominent social media platforms in the world, right?
Yeah. I think the question is this the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning?
Yeah.
I think this is definitely going to be a new regime for TikTok. I mean, obviously, the Supreme Court just ruled that TikTok can be banned, not that
It
it
will.
will be banned, which is one question. Second is Trump, you find, I mean, again, we're not a political show. He always seems to let debates play out and then kind of swoop in at the last minute to be seen as the hero. He's already putting out things like Elon and the president of TikTok, Shuji Chu,
Yep.
are both going to be at the inauguration. He
With
already
Zuck.
talked about exactly Zuck. He's going to be there. He's like, wait, me too.
Also, not only is he there, he's throwing a party. He's all in. He's all in. He's throwing an inauguration party.
Podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, look, TikTok, there's too much money involved. My position from the beginning is there's just entirely too much money involved in TikTok. It's the most scaled video platform, particularly in North America. There are a lot of US companies, small businesses, and brands that depend on revenue from TikTok from an influencer point of view. There's also millions of teenagers, Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, even oldsters are all on the
Granny
talk
Talk, it's a
now.
thing.
Granny Talk is a thing. We all know it. And so there are just too many people that depend on it, so that changing the ownership structure seems like the best approach. As much as Zuck would not love that outcome.
Yeah, that's right. So it remains to be seen what happens, but I'm with you. I think this is more the beginning versus the end, and it's a whole new world and a whole new chapter. So
exactly.
Yeah. So I got another headline for you, which is yeah. So Target is, getting in on this fast fashion game, taking their production timelines from 7 months to 8 weeks. They really want to focus on being more trend forward and capitalizing on, these opportunities. They mentioned bows were trending. PS bows trended in 2023 or 2024 is in 2023, not just 2024. So and then cherries again. When is cherries not a thing?
I love that cherry. I love that cherries example. That was my favorite part of the whole thing.
Was a cherry on top because cherries how many women in the world have cherry tattoos? Like, it's a thing, guys. Like, you can just always bank on cherries will be hot in some way. So I don't know, Rick, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're shortening your supply chain, it's a good thing. I think Target is trying to make sure that they can reclimb back into the consumer consciousness. What investors don't love is the fact that margins are down. And so at the end of the day, if you have Target, that's supposed to be like a little bit higher price point, and Walmart, that's supposed to be a little bit lower price point, to the extent that Target is trying to match Walmart. What is Target's reason to exist anymore? And so I guess if there can still be fashion forward and make money, then investors might be happy with it. But it remains to be seen. I still think there needs to be a leadership change there. Brian Cornell has kind of overstayed his welcome, and they're hiring for a new CMO. We'll see what happens. Hopefully that will be a thing in Q1, and then perhaps when the new management team is in place, they'll find a new CEO as well, who will just fire that old management team.
You making a prediction for 2025?
Target's going to have a new CEO in 2025. That is a prediction. Yes.
All right.
You can mark it down.
is. There it is. You got some news on the Klarna side.
Yeah, Klarna is definitely interesting. They have already filed for an IPO in 2025, but not as a buy now, pay later service, which is interesting because that's how they originally founded. Klarna has been making, to me, one of the most interesting transformations in all the service provider space, where they started as this buy now, pay later service, and they started to add more and more marketing and affiliate functions. And now I would say retail execs and digital leaders now think of Klarna as a way to get traffic. And so how can you garner more attention for your brand, at the same time being a payment provider? So it seems like the payment solution they're looking to get bought, like the debt associated with that, I'm suspecting that on their balance sheet, you don't want a whole bunch of bad consumer loans as you go IPO.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it makes sense. But we know Klarna is just not buy now, pay later. They really have started to take foothold in this retail media and expand their business. They've got 20 million active users in this shopping channel that they have. They're like the super affiliate. Do you believe they're going to just continue to trade more on that versus even their core as a buy now, pay later platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think anymore you can't say it's the core. So at this point, they're they're essentially a marketing solution. And like,
Sure.
how can you get more traffic? And that's it seems like a much better path forward, especially if they're going to IPO, to trade on growth. And so
Right.
they're going to try and get known with more consumers. They're going to add more affiliates to their network. They're going to increase content providers, and that's going to be the flywheel for Klarna. And it'll be interesting to see what their P&L looks like. Similar to Instacart, I think there are a lot of doubters, including me, about Instacart's IPO. They've done pretty well since that, because the number of their competitors is not, hasn't really shaped up as we thought it would. But Klarna doesn't have a lot of, I would say, direct competitors. They're kind of a little bit of a unique offering.
Yeah. I think the other place that Klarna made headlines was their deeper integration with Stripe as well. So Stripe and Klarna have been besties before. Now they want to just not only go from besties, but are they like KASSING swinging in a tree? What's happening? So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out there.
Yeah,
Do we want
one
to talk?
thing that could happen potentially, could Klarna actually develop a marketplace? You talk about integration with Stripe. I mean, they're going to have the brand side, they're going to have the
Yep.
consumer interests. Will Klarna um, develop their own marketplace? It seems to be the natural evolution of all of these sites. Could they become what everyone thought the shop marketplace
Should
could
have been.
become, but never? Shopify seems sort of scared to go in that direction for fear of competing with its brands. Klarna
Yeah.
doesn't have that same problem. Ultimately, if
Right.
they can drive new sales, they have creators,
Yep.
and everyone. So that's another, I think, potential revenue stream for Klarna in the future.
Yeah. Maybe is there a Perplexity Klarna whole thing that comes together, because
Yeah,
we saw, Perplexity hasn't really gotten their piece figured out either. So that
yeah.
one for sure will be interesting to watch. And there's some news on the Walmart side. Do we want to go like, is it news? Is it
I
uh
am not sure. Yeah,
pandering? What is it?
it's hard to say it's news. It seems like Walmart's doubling down on the metaverse. I like AI. I think on a lot of these metaverse situations, you have hallucinations, and this could be one of them, where Walmart's going to make a lot of bets on their future. And look, as long as this is a very small bet and not a big distraction, I think it's not a big deal. I think
Yeah.
folks like Nike uh, started to buy NFT companies a couple of years ago. Thank
Yep.
you, John Donahoe, wrote that down 100%. Um, get lost and good riddance. But Walmart doesn't look like it's making that same mistake. But the question is, at this case, why? And I guess if crypto is going to become a theme in the next 4 or 5 years, which, that seems to be where the political winds are going, it could be a sort of a sneaky bet by Walmart. That's sort of the only upside I see.
Yeah, I guess so. I go back to like their core customer who is looking for everyday low price, ways to feed their family, good clothing that, they don't have to spend a lot of money on, but will look somewhat trendy, which used to be the space, ironically, Target played. Uh, who in their customer base is actually using this? I think that's where I get the disconnect. And if you really believe you're attracting new customers because you're in the metaverse, I just don't feel like people care. That's where I go to this. Is this just a headline play? Is this a
Exactly.
maybe we want to place our bets, to your point, like test some waters?
Yeah.
If you are in Walmart, sorry, and you're on this initiative, you might want to just make
Yeah.
sure you've
Right.
got some
Right
other
into
irons
us.
in the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to interview you because we want to know what's going on here. We don't think it's a big deal. You may tell us otherwise, but I think we've already spilled a lot of ink over this. Then
Yeah.
we're going to see in revenue.
Yeah. 100%. All right. So we got to give the people what we want, or what they want. I think it's time to dive into our NRF recap.
Yes, we are going into the NRF. So if you're not familiar with, the NRF is the National Retail Federation, which we are huge fans of here on the Watson Weekend. And they have a yearly event where they have tens of thousands of people that descend on New York City in the Javits Center, which used to be a place where there was nothing around it. Now there seems to be a lot happening around the Javits, particularly with Hudson Yards nearby.
Yeah.
They hosted their event. We hosted our first ever RMW Commerce event, sort of as like a pre-show event. I know you came in. We'd love to have Nick Kaplan join in. He and I walked the floor quite a number of times, and so I think we can talk about kind of our view of the show.
Yeah, you
and
can't
what
do
was
an
there.
NRF recap without Nick Kaplan, the gambler.
Yeah, two things come to mind. One, when you said we're going to give the people what they want, I thought that's when I was going to be cued in and brought. And two, I was thinking about like time flies, right? So a year ago, Jess and I were actually having this conversation while you were on pat leave.
100%.
It's a very different world, right? Fast forward.
Yeah, I think the world has changed a lot. So let me kick things off. Jess, I know you came in for the show but didn't like
Yep.
walk the floor. So I think Nick and I will talk about some of our
Yep.
experience. There's definitely news in the platform wars. I think the two big things I noticed is number one is Fabric decided what the world knew about it 2 years ago, that they're not actually a platform. They're just sort of an OMS solution. And so there was like, okay, we're not a platform anymore. And then I think on the other side, Commerce Tools decided that we are a platform, but a platform plus. A platform is not enough. We're going to launch an in-store solution. I think, if I'm being honest with everyone, it seems like Shopify has pushed the world in a direction toward unified commerce. Last August, Salesforce acquired a company that, you know, it's a mid-market POS system called PredictSpring. And so Shopify pushed Salesforce into this market, and I think Commerce Tools is starting to feel a little bit of the heat as well. That combined with the fact that if you are going to re-platform, you probably do want a unified commerce solution, that it's become table stakes now. And so I think now that you have some of the top vendors in the Forrester Gartner quadrants, all with unified commerce capabilities, that will be something that's interesting to watch.
Yeah. Did Commerce Tools even change like their positioning with this announcement? You know, they've been very focused on headless, composable. Is that still the drumbeat they're on?
It still seems to be primarily the drumbeat. They want, I think, to be the open platform. They imply that Shopify is a closed platform. I'm not sure that's true anymore. I think that was a true idea 5 years ago, but when you have the most apps of anyone on the market, number one, and two, Shopify has APIs too. The distinction is an extremely perhaps nuanced one that I'm not sure a lot of corporate executives see. So at the end of the day, 2025 is going to be the year of business results. Yeah. And I think the platforms are going to need to compete on that footing. I don't know if you disagree, Nick.
I think that the biggest differentiator is that Shopify's payment gateway is closed, and I think that that is a big issue. I think Commerce Tools, to their credit, recognized the need for a fluid sort of end-to-end solution from a consumer-facing perspective and said, hey, if we're going to provide this solution in terms of open APIs and allow people to kind of build what they want, they need to have a solution in store, which we'll talk about was a major part of NRF. So I think kudos to Commerce Tools for having the vision of the continued relevance of stores and offering a solution. And I would still say that as great as Shopify is and as bullish as I am on like a Shopify or Commerce Tools commerce world, I still think Shopify is a closed platform.
That's an interesting thing. And I think your payment comment is interesting. I wrote the same thing in my NRF recap, where if you have an existing payment solution, particularly if you have a large fleet of stores, like the payment platforms have given you a sweetheart deal, and Shopify is in no position to match it. So it seems like they really need to put the screws to stripe or open
Sure.
up. Like those are the two choices Shopify has in its future.
Yeah. Can we talk about Gen AI for a second? And I know you mentioned in your recap too, and Nick, you've spent a lot of time looking across the floor. Certainly it was a buzzword. Every recap I saw from NRF, it was mentioned. There's all of these tools, whether you have AI or not, talking about AI. Like, how in the world can a retailer wade through the sea of what might be sameness, and like AI is going to revolutionize your experience with us because of X?
I thought that AI was not as sort of present in my face as I thought it would
Mm,
be, meaning
mm,
I was definitely looking, whereas I remember us talking about this last year, that AI was like it was like there, it was like everywhere on the
right.
booths.
Yeah,
I only saw it in certain places and it was sort of not a feature, it was just a component, which I thought was indicative of what's happened, which is I think a lot of what AI is today is computing power, right? Far faster to get results for computation or for prediction.
yeah,
And in aid, I think that like there's a lot being written about have we reached a plateau at the time that we can't really break
Mm,
through. But I feel like AI, it's sort of like table stakes, and it's sort of now just assumed to be part of what solution you're getting. And I think it's less
sure.
about, hey, can AI do this for me? Which is this solution what I need to solve my problem?
right. And as you walk the floor, I know one of your favorite rooms is the Innovation Lounge. Why don't you highlight a couple of, maybe even throw a few bones to the folks that you walk through that the audience may have found interesting, particularly if you didn't attend the event.
So there are three concepts that stood out to me there. Um, and I think that they're indicative again of like where we're heading.
Mm,
So um, one I heard in depth about and didn't speak to, but it's like so brilliant, which is called Size O. And so that solution,
Mhm.
which is like you walk, so the innovation room is like super cool, right? Like you go up to the third floor, it's out of the way
mm,
for sure, but like it's like this alleyway you can't avoid. And I remember like years ago, Narvar was there, just like the founder in the booth, and like it's teeny to
Yeah,
show like what can get started there.
yeah,
And so there's a beautiful view of the Hudson. They have some speaking. So Sizo is essentially like AI that allows you to optimize your assortment that you're purchasing in sizes based on like consumption by store by geo.
sure.
So like for example, if you're
Yeah,
going out and buying like winter coats,
yep,
oftentimes it's like, okay, we're gonna buy a size scale, right?
yeah,
Like a
line.
yep, yep,
36322. And like
yep,
some human has historically done that. It's like,
yeah,
wait a minute, at the end of a season, why do I have all these like 22s,
Odd
right? Or like,
lots.
well,
yeah,
exactly. So that was one thing I thought was really terrific because like that is a huge problem. It's a huge
yep,
problem for inventory, which you know how I feel about inventory, it kills. It's
Yeah,
for sustainability. We want to buy less, and
yeah,
for efficiency, like Gemroy.
yeah. By
Two,
the way, the CEO of Sizo is an old friend of
yes,
mine and Jess, Gray
yep,
King,
uh,
who we've worked with in the past. Actually, a former
can I
RMW
like
customer.
guess that that
yeah,
either ties back to one of two places for you, Rick? Channel Advisor or eBay?
They
yes.
All
definitely
roads to
both
Boston, right,
actually.
Jess?
Yes.
All roads lead. I'm just saying, you guys,
Right?
they all lead there. Promise.
So the second was, and I'm familiar with these guys, but like to watch them have birthed to now having Revolve as a client. And while I don't want to discuss the number because it's not fair, the incrementality that they offered to Revolve last year was so incredible. I was like, even if you took 20% of that number, it would still be meaningful. And it's called Curated for You. And what they do
Mhm.
is they have an ability to attribute products so that they help you build landing pages based on like interest. So for
Yeah,
example, and this was the genesis, it's like Jess is the merchant at
yep,
really great fashion brand. And she's like, okay, I want to do a thing about Aspen. So they build a landing
Mm,
page that like doesn't require a human to be like, that like, I remember those days too. Give
right.
me a
oh, yes,
product list in Excel of
yes.
all the things that, right? So
These
that's
are the
super cool. Curated
IDs.
for you.
You put them into the
Ex-
CM. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly, right? It's like in the back end of like, like
yes,
ATG.
Yes,
So
yes. I
the
actually
third,
did that at Barnes and Noble Marketplace when Rick and I were there. I would
Love
like
it.
build all the merchandise landing pages for the marketplace. It was fun stuff.
and you saw the battle scars. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Ouch.
so,
That was .NET
so
PS also.
oh gosh. The third solution, which was super interesting, and I've been meaning to talk to these guys for a long time. I'm a huge, huge, huge incrementality guy, and I have, a ton of respect for Measured, which is a great incrementality testing tool. In the innovation room was House, Haus. Chatted with the CEO and founder, and I think that it's a great solution. It's different than Measured. I mean, I don't think there are a ton of incrementality solutions out there, but look, we invest a lot of dollars in inventory. We're getting much better about human capital, like where it goes, 1099s versus FTEs, and how we're
Mhm.
managing that. We have to manage our spend. I mean, Rick, I love to quote you when you said to me once in a meeting, look, businesses are in the business of acquiring and retaining customers. If you could drive more efficiency on your spend and look at the incrementality, the true incrementality of your investments, you would be so much better. So you may think, and this is like so interesting, like SMS we thought was so incremental, but
Mm.
when we actually used Measure to measure it, it really wasn't. And so
Mm.
looking at paid social versus paid search versus affiliate and where you're
Yep.
investing all your dollars.
Yep.
And so House was incredible. So those are the three things that like stood out in my mind.
That's great.
That's super
Uh,
interesting.
do we want to talk through like things that we had from an expectations perspective of NRF and what we expected to see or wanted to see and what was reality?
I mean, I wanted
I
to see
think,
more innovation, right?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a bigger innovation room. I think we saw a lot of stores. I expected to see a few bigger announcements. We definitely saw some new OMS players. It seems like the OMS world is getting complicated. Pipe 17 has kind of moved from calling themselves order operations, which I think is still part of their messaging, into an order management system on the brand side. Whereas traditionally, the way to think about order management, kind of going back to the days of IBM and Sterling and Manhattan, is a retailer OMS,
Yeah.
dealing with all your points of distribution. But I think, some of the things we've done in the modern brand promise, which yours truly over there, Nick, authored, um, the more channels a brand has to deal with and the more points of distribution that you have to ship from, the more a brand starts looking like a retailer and needs their
Yeah.
own kind of OMS to coordinate all the channels that they're working with.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
I
do we
think
want to
that,
get sorry.
well, I'll
Go
just
ahead,
say,
Nick.
I mean, I think that like, yeah, I was going to say like to kind of try to close this out because it wasn't
Yeah.
all that, like it wasn't what I expected. It was great to see people and great to sort of understand a little of what's happening. Store, security, and like a lot of grocery optimization and like quick service restaurants, like checkout, all
Mhm.
self-serve. So to me, that was it. Like, I mean, that
Yeah.
that pretty much sums it up. It's like, you know, it made me be really excited to go to like Shop Talk
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I want to see the commerce world where I was like, wait, what is this? It's not like loyalty. It's not customer centric. It's not like, what is this exactly? And it was just
Yeah.
like a giant networking event.
Right.
Yeah. And we've been researching the retail world for a long time, saw what happened in 2024. RMW put together a list of 5 forces that we think are affecting the future of e-commerce into 2025. And we kind of took all of that knowledge and insights and blasted it into our own event as part of NRF. That I think this is a good transition point now. Kind of the genesis of this is, through the whole team, Vinny, the folks on this call, Jackie, Kaylee, and everyone. Whereas we believe we can collect a community of people that cares about what's happening next. Unlike a lot of outlets out there, a lot of the things that we put on, we have a point of view. And so I think having venues to describe that point of view is something we're going to continue to do here. So we're excited about that. It's the event started off. First of all, the event was super cool. The venue.
Oh, so cool.
We already talked about the food.
Yeah.
Just to create some FOMO, which is Nick's always favorite part of every event.
I mean, food, and you're getting to my second favorite part, which is drink. I walked in and saw that bar, and I was like, "Wow! Like this
is super cool.
This is pretty cool." I mean,
yeah, we had the
That's
vibes
amazing.
for sure.
Do we have anything we can show people? Like, I
think we've got some teaser.
I think is going to happen in 2025. The things that we're going to talk about today are what we believe are the 5 forces affecting e-commerce. You go to a lot of the events at NRF and you're going to hear a lot of PR. Hopefully you don't hear a lot of PR here. You hear what's actually going on. Yeah, that's interesting. That's
you cleaned up well.
Yeah,
you suited up.
Yeah,
and your hair looked good. And most importantly, and I think you should share with people, like, as much as I had preview into it, actually sitting and listening to you talk about it was like, wow.
It was an interesting event, and I think the idea of combining networking, which my apologies if you got shushed during the event, because we had half the room that was interested in the content, half the room that was just interested in the food and the networking. And I think we did try and pull that off to the extent possible. We talked about the 5 forces. Those 5 forces, we can talk about the cheap consumer, marketing is king, merchandising is queen, the generative brand, the venture capital world, and private equity and exits, and then finally the new brand playbook. I think we have a clip from one of these, the cheap consumer, and what we're seeing out there as far as the consumer's room to run. E-commerce is still a great place to be. 2022 was kind of the low point. Everyone was wondering, like, 2023 was like incrementally more positive. And then 2024 is like, okay, it was better than 2023. I think where we sit here is that 2025 is going to be better than either of those years.
I mean, there was a really amazing slide, and like, certainly when you were not around a lot, I just remember a lot of mine was like negativity on the consumer with Jess. It's like, Jess had the happiness index, and then I'd pour water,
right.
and I'd be like, well,
The
everybody
sadness
has got
index.
Yeah.
And then you put that slide up. Do we have that slide? I mean, the slide of sort of like the consumer has room. And I was like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
the consumer has room, and I think Vinny has that we can put up, as well as the fact that, this slide looks back on the right side. What we have here is the debt to income ratio, which is the bottom line, which is like unremarkable. Obviously, everyone sees that household debt is increasing, but also people are getting a lot more richer, apparently, because the income to debt ratio is not increasing at the same time, and certainly not relative to 2008, which is super huge. And if you kind of go back on the left side, which is your charge-off rate in consumers' loan, basically just when you default on a loan, you're like, you cry uncle and say, I can't pay my debts. There's nothing that remarkable. Yes, there's a slight uptick from COVID, but relative to historical levels, you have to go back pretty far to see anything interesting happening with delinquencies. It seems like to me that delinquencies are what we should care about, because that's the point where you're can't do anything else. And the fact that that's not a red flag here, I thought was great context for everyone.
Yeah. And I know that, I know that next week we're going to probably delve a little further, but I think it was like really worth sharing that to me was like revelatory.
Yeah. So I think that was interesting. And then we also had a panel discussion, which Nick led, with David Cost and Alara Verrett. And I think we have quick clips here where Nick can talk about some of the questions he asked them. And I think we had a couple of choice quotes that we wanted to show here too.
I think it's the merchandise piece. I mean, I think often as people in e-commerce, we're fancy store managers. Right? We have to sell what we're given by the merchants. And if the merchandise isn't right and the price isn't right, there's limits to what we could do. And I think that game of how we pick merchandise, that feedback loop that you alluded to with Shein, there is something there that I think the rest of the retail world is going to have to figure out.
Look, I thought it was incredible to be able to sit there and speak to two industry stalwarts in David and Alara, who have very different sort of roles in environments they play in. David has a company that has over 1,000 stores, has been doing it a long time, brings in merchandise at by the container load to sell to a certain type of consumer, and has been very disrupted by the Sheins and the Temus. And to hear him talk about his thought on like our five forces was like really incredible. And as we drop that content, I think David's a person that's out there, talks a lot, and is very, very smart. And I think there's a lot to be learned as to how they're surviving and thriving, really, and evolving. Changes that
Right.
they've made in the way he works inside his organization.
Yeah,
And
I thought
Alara,
he had a quote that 30% of his orders are now buy online,
Right.
ship to store, which was to me kind of a blow away number for a feature that he didn't have 3 months ago.
Yeah. And I think that goes to show you also the basics can still help you win, right? Like these were things we've been talking
There's no
about
AI
for
involved in
years.
that.
Yeah,
It's
no
supply
AI
chain.
involved. It's just it's an insight. It's what they needed to do to better reach their customer. So I think a lot of times we're like looking for the next shiny object, and a lot of times it's just keep doubling down on the basics and the fundamentals.
and I think Alara, who comes from a different world, right? Very sort of storied company in Canada, in the hundreds of stores, strong digital presence, strong connection to the consumer, 3 different brands, and how, look, there were definitely denominators, but certainly differentiators as well. And
Yep.
I think hearing her talk about how she operates, things that she does to optimize, and some of her vision was like awesome. I think we booked 2 incredible guests, and obviously Rick, who just has such an interesting and unique experience lens on his side, that the 3 of them talk was like really pleasurable for me to get to do that.
That's exciting.
So top line has been a focus for a long time, but very recently the shift to bottom line has become more important. We are value-based brand, so we do work a lot on promotion, and that's been a tough, it's a tough drug to get off. At the same time, when we talk about Shein and Temu, I think we need a little bell every time we mention that in this conversation. Yeah, exactly. And, we're seeing from a consumer perspective that they are a little bit getting off the train, seeing that the quality isn't where it needs to be. And so we're a little bit more sustainably minded in Canada. But overall, like our internal conversations are shifting much more strongly to bottom line.
Got it. The U.S.
I love that question. Like, which is, we talk so much about comps and like sales, and that's what the market seems to often talk about. But it's like, what's more important, top line or bottom line in your organization? And she had a great answer.
Yeah.
So
No, that's super. We had so much fun at the event. We didn't even get to show everything on the show. We actually have next week's show is going to be a recording of our live event, which is the Watson Weekend recording of the Watson Weekend. Is it a little two-dimensional there? And so definitely make sure to tune in next week to see what you missed. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that was you guys were great, by the way. I mean, your relationship with MJ, he's awesome. I would definitely strongly encourage people to bookmark it next week. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we also wanted to give an opportunity for Nick, you to do the first but not last of your Kaplan's Corner. And we've got a new shiny video to intro you. So let's kick it.
This is perfect.
NRF last year when I got to hang out with Vinny. So, but listen, I said it. I thought NRF it definitely was like reflective of an inflection point, and so I wish it had been more, honestly, of a inflection point. But I figured doing kind of an obit for like retail as we knew it and a birth announcement for retail as we'll know it would be cool for a Kaplan's Corner. So, I mean, let's dive in. And first of all, retail. A farewell to layers, legacy, and limitation. First, the way. Gone is the way. We like to say TTWWADI. That's the way we've always done it. Adios to the ivory tower and the hierarchical structures of organizations and the layers of like EVPs, SVPs, VPs, AVPs, and everything else that goes down to the lowest of layers and really holds the man back. Outdated decision making. No more I think or I feel, to go back to our SIZO. Like, data needs to tell us what to do. Legacy technology, monolithic detached commerce systems, on-prem anything. The green screen, yes, it still exists. The AS400 and very, very, very painful ERP integrations that effectively we're betting our companies on. Static pricing models, sayonara. The transaction, really thinking transactionally about retail, like one-to-all, one-to-many model of commerce, one-sided commerce, creating supply and expecting marketers to create demand. It's a dead end. The large format store, let alone the department store. I know my friend from Simon Properties, Nick Reisner, where they're working very hard to change this, may not love that, but it's true. Four-wall contribution, gone. We need to rethink how we value stores. Expansive and static and super expensive content where we spend tons of dollars on permits, etc. Finished. Workforce constraints, the captive dev team, no longer. And the rigid geographic limitations for our work is gone as the world is our oyster. The notion of meeting them where they are, And last, RIP, privacy and third-party data reliance. The days of relying on cookies and third-party data are over. Now, the birth of the new. We have gotten on to the Supernova Highway and the new modern brand promise that Rick's mentioned before, like a fluid experience and relationships that never end, as we talked about in that paper we wrote with Pipe 17. A new funnel where the middle is actually that transaction and the end is possibly even the return. Flat circular organizations give way to new communal circular organizations. Things actually happen from people doing the work. We build our plans. We operate from the bottom up together. No more boundaries, no more limit. Time is now our most important resource. And let's use it wisely, because there are no limits when you actually are when you're processing free cash flow and thinking through. Here is conversational commerce very much being talked about in social platforms like TikTok for a few days, Instagram, and peer-to-peer selling. They replace the traditional means of just like a ROAS-driven model. The yield optimization model has arrived. This is not about transactions and thinking today. It's about turning inventory faster, creating free cash flow, living on GemROI, and optimizing and thinking a longer term as to how we survive and thrive. The digital self is born. You do not need to own inventory. Your supply can be limitless and endless. Your pricing dynamic, and you can actually, again, drive free cash flow, customer retention, all through these means. An easier and adaptable visual search. Yes, we will live by visual search. It has not caught on to the degree with which it should, but you will ultimately wind up, in my opinion, tomorrow with a communal cart. Add all day long, and ultimately commerce will happen at the end of your day. And I think that peer-to-peer selling, like I talked about, like that is a new thing, giving way to traditional affiliate selling. And I know Klarna views itself as such, but people start to work outside the parameters of those constraints. Small stores matter, like 400, 800 square feet. email capture, returns, visits, and building communities. I think augmented and immersive experiences, 3D, here to let us experience without having to actually experience. And I think predictive analytics, while AI is helpful, truly give way with their accessibility and mindset changes. And as we think ahead of the future of the 5 forces, the marketing is king, merchandising is queen. This is a lot of that. And of course, lastly, at the center of it all is the engine of generative AI. There are some eternal constants, constant investment in technology, agile organizations that can shift with the consumer, a core metric of GemROI, our trailing 12-month customer file, a focus on free cash flow, and ultimately a human-centric leadership, because Milton may no longer be in the basement with his swing line stapler, for those that get the reference, but the need for smart, adaptable talent is evergreen, and we always have to keep getting better. And that, my friends, is the obit and the rebirth or birth of retail, and I guess your first Kaplan's Corner of the year.
Amazing.
It was a great way to kick it off, Nick. And I love how you talk about the obituary and the birth, because we are in a new era. We're going to slow clap you on that one. And, but that really wouldn't be the Watson Weekend style. I think it's time to close this out on a dance party.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
The virtual dance party.
Yes, exactly.
The real one. We had some good ones. See you next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week with a recording of the NRF event. Don't miss it. Have a good one.
Slow clap.